Episode number 25, Steve Lucas.
All right, cut to edge of stage. Great. All right, color frost.
Check. 1, 2, 3. Check.
Stand by, please. House to half, house out, letting cues 1 through 10, down cues 1 through 10.
And welcome back to the Title Block, a show about Canadian theatre designers, their history, and their craft. And I'm your host, Michael Cruz, yet again. This time I interviewed designer Steve Lucas from his cozy design cottage at his home in Creemore, Ontario. We talk about his early career in Calgary, despite his real birthplace, and his work at Buddies and Bad Times Theatre with the late Ken McDougall. We also cover his residency at Theatre Pass Marais and the smash hit Two Pianos, Four Hands, while ending with his personal ode to Samuel Beckett called Breathe. First, I wanted to share with you a letter. Yes, I actually received a letter that came from the head of design at Soul Pepper Theatre here in Toronto, Lorenzo Savoini. Now, I've never said his name out loud, so I'm assuming that's the correct pronunciation. I'm sure he'll tell me if it's not. And I'm not really sure if this show is getting to the audience that it's intended for, which is really the young and just starting out designer. But I have pushed on in the hope that I can build an audience that is as fascinated by the stories of Canadian designers as I am. Now, Lorenzo's letter, in fact, confirms this, and I wanted to share his comments with you. Lorenzo writes, "Hi, Michael. If I'm honest, I'm not entirely sure if we've met before. I don't think we have. But I have been literally meaning to write you for many months now to tell you just how wonderful your podcast is. I'm the head of design at Soul Pepper, and I also run the Design Academy here, and I get them to listen to your podcast as just interesting material that will connect them to their community, but also the living history of their craft in this country. At any rate, after recently listening to Bonnie's episode, I thought Title Block is starting to really add up to something potentially very important to the design community and to the next generation. I would have loved to have heard these once I graduated and was adrift, feeling like I would never make it in this business. I'm a podcast buff, but like many, I mostly just binge on This American Life, and most recently Alec Baldwin's Here's the Thing. You're doing a great job, and I hope you continue to do so. I really urge you to make sure you interview Michael Levine. He is living in London now, but has made such an impact on so many designers that he's been a mentor to myself included, and just his body of work speaks for himself. All the best, Lorenzo." Well, that is so sweet, honest to God. And it really makes me happy that this project is helping to connect new theater artists to their past. And thank you so much, Lorenzo. Now, if you feel like Lorenzo and want to help ensure that I continue to be able to work on the show, please consider going to patreon.com/the Title Block podcast and support the show. For a couple of bucks an episode, you'll be helping to pay for bandwidth, equipment, travel, and new tech like Periscope. Now, for those of you who joined us at the Bellows on January 18th via Periscope, the new live broadcast app that works through Twitter, new is a bit relative there, it's been around probably for a couple of years now, we had an interesting conversation about working with your friends called Friendship is Magic. Friendship is Magic. Now, you'll probably hear everything, you probably heard everything very well because I was sending the recording feed directly into the iPad, but the visuals probably left you flat, like they left me flat. Now, Periscope, that's because I'm using the camera right on the iPad. Periscope is now allowing an external video source via GoPro 4, both the silver and the black editions. But these are a considerable expense at around $600 Canadian. It'll be great to share these types of live events and make them as high quality as possible so you can actually see people's faces, for example. And with your support on Patreon, it would help. So there's my plug. Now, our next Periscope, if you're interested in joining us, will go live on February 22nd at 7:45 p.m. We were a bit early last time. I thought we were starting a bit earlier, but 7:45 p.m. is when we'll go live. The show will start at 8 o'clock, so you'll be able to join us, get your popcorn, and sidle up to the old iPad or your Android device. And we will once again be at the Theatre Pass Marais in Toronto to talk about, this time, why you need a production manager. Probably a very important and essential conversation. The guests list is yet to be shared with me, but I'm sure it'll be a terrific lineup. Instructions to tune in will be at thetitleBlock.com. There's already a post up there from the last one that was on January 18th, but I'll be posting another one just to make it clear. It's really just as easy as installing the app on your iOS or Android device and searching for the Title Block. That's it. While you are at it, you can find us at Twitter at the Title Block CA and on Facebook / the Title Block Podcast. And you can always, like Lorenzo did, send me an email at the titleBlock at gmail.com as well. But enough jammering on. Now, my interview with designer Steve Lucas. Steve Lucas has been a designer for almost 30 years. My God. I'm old. For the last 3 decades, Steve has designed award-winning sets and lighting for more than 300 productions of theater, dance, and performance art. And we'll talk about that in a second. His work has toured extensively and has been seen all across Canada, the United States, the UK, Europe, Scandinavia, Russia, Australia, and Asia, not Antarctica.
Not yet.
Slacker. Welcome, Steve Lucas. Welcome to the Title Block.
Thank you.
We're sitting here in your beautiful studio here in Creemore, Ontario.
I was going to say, it's good to be here, but I didn't go anywhere.
I know. Well, thank you for, this is what I said to on the last interview with Bill Schmuck. Thank you for joining me today, Bill. He said, yes, in my office. I said, yes, thank you for joining me in your office. So here we are in your studio here in Creemore, Ontario. Just for those who think that this is a Toronto-centric podcast, because really it is. Because I get to, I could drive to...
Guilty as charged.
I could drive to Manitoba, but that's a bit of a long drive. So
it's a nice drive.
Is it?
Northern Ontario. Man.
I hear Sudbury and beyond is a bit rocky.
Yeah, but not in a bad way.
Okay.
As long as the weather's okay. Don't do it at night. That would be stupid. But
the moose.
Every time you come over a hill, you'll go, wow, and want to take a picture. Every single hill, we did that. We just did the drive a few years ago with the kids all the way to BC, to Vancouver Island.
That's fantastic.
All right.
Okay, wait, there's a podcast.
Oh, right.
Let's talk about your early career, because you. Now I said that because it's a preface to my next question, which is, you're not from Toronto originally. You grew up someplace else, right?
I was born in Brampton.
What?
I know, exotic. But I was raised in Calgary.
And when did you move to Calgary?
Grade 6.
Okay, and then what happened? How did you get back here? First of all, grade 6, Calgary.
Yeah.
How did you decide to go into theater? What started you off on that journey?
Junior high was the first time. I had no intention of going into theater. It was always going to be film. When I was a kid, I had a great love for movies, and it was always like a birthday treat. Whenever I had a birthday, my parents or my dad would take me to go see a movie, and it came out of a love of film, and then wanting to understand how movies were made. And I was, I was going to movies, in the 70s. So, my first love was like Smokey and the Bandit and all the stunts and that. And then it was Jaws, and that was a big thing, in my life, was how on earth did they do that? And then 2 years after that, there was this little movie called Star Wars. And with it came all of the making of things, all the specials on TV, back before we had VHS or DVDs with extras, before we had home entertainment systems of any kind. There would be those, behind the scenes special effects things and Starlog magazine. And it was all wanting to understand the craft of filmmaking. And when I got into junior high, I was like, oh, look, a drama class, that might be a good way of, I was convinced I was going to be a director. I decided at a very early age I was going to be a director, and that, I'm very goal oriented, and I decided that at the age of 28, I'd be getting my first Best Director Oscar and be the youngest person to ever be awarded that. And on my 28th birthday, John Singleton got that exact same thing. He was the youngest person I think that ever won at that point. Anyway, but I am not John Singleton. But getting into theater as a method of getting into film, I just basically got sidetracked and fell in love with it.
And what was your first? Was it high school or
junior high? Actually,
it was junior high.
Yes.
What was your first production you ever did?
That's a good question. I have no idea.
You have no idea.
It wasn't even about. It was more about the camaraderie around it. I mean, we did. I think we did a production of Oklahoma. We did. remember we did something in high school. There were no productions per se in junior high, but we did stage combat, which, I was a very active, hyperactive kid actually. And so it gave me something to do with all that extra energy. And just getting to play make believe and then realizing that there's lights and that, you can point that and do different things with it. And I actually worked for the school board on the weekends. Sam Shaw, who now works at Harborfront, he and I went to high school together, and we actually worked for the school board and ran rentals in our theater in high school. So like I was a technician at the age of 14.
Yeah.
Actually getting paychecks. It was great.
Did you have much interaction with Theatre Calgary? Did you see shows there, or
I saw shows there. I had it was Alberta Theatre Projects got me into theater in the first place. We in the last year of high school we had the Sears Drama Festival, which was my equivalent of like the high school football player touchdown prom king thing. Was that we won the Sears Drama Festival. And I directed a piece that was there was like a smaller, there was the main stage and there was a smaller productions. And I directed one of those based on that was an original piece that came out of our drama class. And Sam was actually in. He'd probably hate me for telling this story. He was great in it, by the way. Anyway, but, and we won for that as well. And on top of that, so that's two, but I got the hat trick because I can't even remember how I did it, but I managed to wheedle my way into being the assistant to the adjudicator, who was Michael Dobbin, who was the artistic director at Alberta Theatre Projects. So like all in the same couple of days, I won the best director. I designed the show that won the main stage, and he gave me a job at Alberta Theatre Projects, which was it was like a government grant. It was $25 a week to go and work there for a full season. But it was the season that they moved into the Performing Arts Center in Calgary when it was just being built. So I worked there that whole summer and got to know the building, and all the new gear arrived, and I worked there the whole year. And I got to work with some really, amazing people. Like Jeffrey Dallas came through and did a show. Michael Egan came through and did a show. And Michael Egan actually showed up to do a production of Noises Off. And when he arrived for his residency, he had not drawn anything, like nothing. So it was my job as like the 19-year-old. I remember the production manager saying, sit here and listen to his stories. And I sat beside him and watched him draft for like 3 days. And once in a while, he'd go out on the roof and smoke a joint and come back in and draft some more. And he just talked and talked. And I didn't realize who Michael Egan was. I had no clue. He is somebody you should interview, by the way, because he's a hoot. But
we definitely have plans to do that. Absolutely.
Good. Yeah, because, he's hilarious. And everything rhymes, It's not on the page, it's not on the stage, But truisms, like little pearls of wisdom he was dropping. And I was just, I was the cute little 19-year-old boy. Go sit beside him and keep him talking, keep him drafting. And watching him draw for days was like, I didn't know that people could do that.
Is that seems to be an experience that may be a lost opportunity now that everyone's using AutoCAD? Because that'd be a much less, I don't know, appealing thing to do, to watch you draft on AutoCAD.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
You're like watching somebody edit film instead of doing card tricks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, so you're 19 years old at ABT, not ABT, that's Alberta Ballet Theatre. That's something completely different. Let me start again. So you're 19 years old at Alberta Theatre Projects, ATP. Did you think about training at this point? Because you're now out of high school. You're getting what is a traditional theater education, right? Through apprenticeship, basically, right?
Yeah, without the student debt. Yeah. So no, and at that point, I was still going to be a director. Like, it was still all about getting into directing. It was still all about. I'm not sure it was still about film at that point. At that point, I saw a production of Equus that completely blew my mind. I saw a production of Streetcar that was like all Venetian blinds and lighting. It was like, wow. And I think my drama teacher was actually in that from junior high, and that was like mind-blowing to watch her on stage. But and a production of Buried Child, that just terrified me. The ending of that play was like, you can do scary things on stage. And just bit by bit, my view opened up. But also the number of the people, like the designers and the actors that came through that building in that first year was astonishing. And just, yeah, and, you know, when all the new lights arrived and that new gear smell, you know, it's very tantalizing. So yeah, bit by bit I got sucked into it.
What, just as a sidebar, what kind of gear was it all electro control stuff that they had bought out there? Because it was Calgary in the early 80s, right? Late 70s?
I don't remember. I think there was a lot of Berkey color trends, which at the time was like the best of the best. I remember those because you could change the degree. Wow. Oh my God. But they had a Premiere Pro, the lighting console. It looked like something out of the first generation of Star Trek. It was like all wood paneling. It wrapped right around you. It was a gigantic desk. It had a heads-up display. Oh, wow. So like this piece of glass on an angle so that you could like see a reflection. And we had two of them because one of them was a backup. Yeah. So there was, which I'd never even heard of before, the idea of having a backup board. It's like, this is like Christmas.
Decadence. Just decadence.
I remember when I got to the Poor Alex, I did my first show at the Poor Alex, and it was like, oh, we're out of gaff tape. Where do I get more gaff tape? And they're like, no, that was it. Like, no, but well, so that was resource management was something I didn't learn until, you know, the Poor Alex Theatre Center days.
Yeah. I remember when I was a kid, I worked at the Center in the Square in Kitchener, which was a state-of-the-art touring house. Giant 2,000 seat theater, 2,000 seat theater, and then the grid is like 90 feet and it's 60 by 80. Like it's a giant house. And then I went to Ryerson to go to school at the Ryerson Theater, which was woefully out of date, still using century dog legs, and you know the hemp lines hadn't been changed for who knows how long, and I was supremely disappointed. I thought, well, aren't all theaters like this state-of-the-art theater I grew up in? Come on, guys, where's all your gear?
Well, I mean, I didn't mind the downgrade, as it were, in technology, because at the same time I was actually allowed to touch things, you know, where, you know, a lot of the time I wasn't. Like the idea of touching that Premiere Pro, I would have had my fingers broken by the lighting guy. Like, forget it. But, you know, at the Poor Alex, I could stand on a chair, refocus Fresnels. You know, it's like, I can do anything here. This is great. So
at what point did you decide that directing, I mean, you still wanted to be a director, but not in film, in theater, right? Mm-hmm. What was your next step then after Alberta Theatre Projects?
I left and came to Toronto. We skipped over this. The first thing I did is in my apprenticeship at Alberta Theatre Projects was they said, oh, you stage managed, right? And I said, oh, yeah, I know everything there is to know about stage management. Of course I do. You know, I was 19 and arrogant, right? And so they gave me a workshop that was in a little office building that they were using because the Performance Arts Centre was still under construction. And it was a new play by this guy from Toronto named Sky Gilbert, and called The Postman Rings Once. I can remember which one's the movie, which one's the play. There's The Postman Rings Once.
I think so, because The Postman Always Rings Twice is the movie. I think, yeah. Okay.
How do you think I get this straight? And so I met Sky, and I stage managed this thing, and we didn't have much contact, but there was Sky Gilbert. And then when I moved to Toronto, which was I came to Toronto when I was 19, like right after that, and I was only going to be here for a few weeks and I was going off to Europe with some friends. But we got here and everything changed, you know. When you take a group of friends out of Calgary and drop them into downtown Toronto, everything changes. And eventually I managed to get myself a job being a busboy. And one day there was this new busboy come on named Jim Jones, who was an actor, but also a busboy. And so I trained him. In exchange for training him for the day, he said, hey, let's go crash this opening at this theater right down the street called TWP. So we crashed the opening of a play called B-Movie.
Which is a classic Toronto thing. I mean, I remember people seeing it when I was in Kitchener. What year was this?
1987, 1988.
Yeah, that's about right. I remember there was the big scene. There was a big
86.
scene in that thing where they went from black and white. The thing was shot. It was designed in black and white, and at one point somebody walks on stage, some sort of blonde bombshell, and the entire thing goes to color, right?
That's right.
Yeah. I remember this was
Godzilla
incredible.
makes a cameo appearance, and like it's a crazy show.
Yeah.
I actually talked to Bob Baker because I thought that'd be great for Theatre Orangeville, and he said, "Yeah." What's the name of the guy who wrote it? Bob Baker's partner. Anyway, he said he won't let anybody do it. It's too dated now. He doesn't think it'd work again, and which I think is a colossal shame. As somebody who's a big fan of old films, like I would love to see. I would love to get a crack at designing that. Are you kidding me? But he won't let it be done again. So there it is. But anyway, at that opening was Sky Gilbert. And there was this new thing in Toronto called a Futures Grant. And he said, "How old are you?" And I said, 19. And he said, "Perfect. I can get you on this government grant," making just slightly more than the $25 a week I'd made in Calgary. So, but through that, I met everybody else. So your question was, how did I become a designer? I was working a lot with Ken McDougall, who was a phenomenal director and sadly missed. He had a show that needed designing, and Stefan Droog was too busy to do it. So he said, "It's just a little one-person show. You're drawing." I was always drawing. I always had sketchbooks, and I was drawing constantly. He said, "You're always drawing all the time. Why don't you do it?" And so I said yes. And that was See Bob Run, which was Daniel McIver's first show in Toronto as well. And it was a hit and toured right across the country. And I ended up doing two. So there was the original production, and then we did a remount, which then had to be built to tour. So that was my first show, was also my first tour right off the bat.
So tell me about See Bob Run.
See Bob Run.
What was it about, and what was compelling about it that you found this is what I need to do for the rest of my, or at least for a good significant part of my life?
You know what it was I got a good review. To be honest, like the process of it was fun, and it was great. Like, and I'd done enough lighting design at school, that I kind of knew where to point the lights and stuff. And I'd been watching Stefan like on Steel Kiss, and I'd been working on several Sky shows as like ASM and just doing whatever needed to be done. It just kind of did it. It's like, I want to have a light over here. I want this to be blue. I want this to be warm. And I had a good side and a bad side of the road. And there was like this car seat in the middle. So it was very simple because we had no money. But I got a review that called it a model of creative economy. And that became my design philosophy. Right. I mean, to this day, really, like, less is more. It can be more. Absolutely. If you're careful about what you choose, you can get away with very, very little.
That's fantastic, and that's a pretty big litany of first starts, right? Or people that you're working with, McDougall, Sky Gilbert, Daniel McIver.
Yeah.
Sky was already an established, probably nationally known artist, but Daniel McIver was the beginning of his career, right?
Oh, it was right at the start. Yeah. Yeah. And he'd written that for Caroline because they came for Caroline Gillis. They'd come to Toronto together, and he's like, yeah. So he wrote it for her. He figured it would be easy to produce. He and Ken, not sure how he and Ken hooked up, how they were friends, but yeah, we did that, and away he went.
Yeah. And did you stay his? Did you work with that team a lot?
Yeah, yeah. Basically, for the rest of Ken's life, I designed. Never Swim Alone. Well, not all of them. They did shows like 2-2 Tango. I didn't have anything to do with. Never Swim Alone. There was others. Never Swim Alone was a big one for sure, because that was one that I really like. We built furniture for, and I still have some of it. That was huge. And when that got remounted was the last show I did with Ken, because he died. But that was also the best working experience we ever had, which is, both wonderful and a shame all at the same time,
Can you tell me a little bit about Ken McDougall? What was it like to work with him? How was he as a director and a personality?
He was phenomenal. He was a really good friend as well. He has so much creativity in him. Like, he could dance. He was like a singer. He was like a triple threat kind of guy. And we never got to do a musical together. I mean, he was in Susie Goo, Private Secretary, you know, which was also a big show for me at the George Street Buddies.
Another Sky Gilbert.
Another Sky
show.
Gilbert masterpiece. Yeah, I don't know. Like of all the people that we lost to AIDS, like I can't think of how different the theater scene in this country would be if he had been working for the last, well, it's 20 years now he's been gone, and how much of an impact he was having, you know, when he got, you know, when he died, you know, it just, it breaks my heart, you know, and not just as a friend, but as a creator. Like there was nobody better than him. Nobody.
Scott, you were instrumental in managing the transition to 12 Alexander of Buddies in Bad Times, which was the old TWP space.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that journey and how that started? And
yeah, they wanted to have they didn't want to hire a theater consultant per se. They put together a team of designers, and originally it was Jim Plaxton, Stefan Droge, and me. And Jim came to one meeting and left and said, "I've done this. I don't need to do this again." And he was done. And so it was Stefan and I for quite a while, like a year. And then Stefan dropped out as well. He and Sky had a falling out, I believe, but I won't speak to that. But he was gone. And I brought Andrea Lundy in, like in the 11th hour. Like all the architecture at that point was settled. And it was more about picking gear and like the grid design. I think that was well underway as well. Stefan had a big hand in that. But I saw it right through. And I learned a lot about theaters and architects in that process. And it was great. It was Martin Lefebvre and Associates was the architect on that. And it was an amazing process, but I learned a lot of things. And one of the things was that you really need to hire a theater consultant, you know, and that architects have a completely different understanding. They were architects who specialized in green buildings, which made all the sense in the world, except that they wanted to do like radiant heating in the flooring in the main space. They wanted the whole ceiling to be silver, so it would reflect the heat back down. It was like, okay, no.
First of all, we need a trap.
Yeah.
And second of all, we don't want to see the ceiling.
Yeah.
When you turn all the lights on, right?
Screws are going into this floor, you know, and after doing years and years at George Street, it's like everything needs to be able to be hosed down. You have no idea what kind of parties they throw in here. Frankly, either do I. I don't get invited to them, and that's okay. They're not for me. But I've seen the aftermath of these parties on several occasions. So like everything needs to be able to be hosed down. You cannot possibly imagine what's going to happen in this theater artistically and socially. You can't wrap your mind around it. So we have to accommodate for everything. So make it all unbreakable. If it's not wood, make it concrete, make it steel, and everything's going to get painted black. Like you need to understand that. And we went to we toured a couple of theaters. One was the Premier Dance Theater and the Ice House, whatever it's called now. And we're showing them. The light locks are a perfect example of it. When we moved into on the architecture drawings, it said steel door, steel door, steel door. Great, and we had double doors. We move into the space, they're glass. And I said, "Why are these doors glass? It's a light lock." They said, "Well, they're not. They're steel doors. See, it's all steel framing. These are glass doors." And like for the first show, they put up black paper because they didn't want to paint it, and then they painted it, so they're still glass. But it's painted black. Yeah. The door to the park, which was meant to be able to be opened or just draw back drapes, so you get some light in there, right? And be able to do theater in the park if they wanted to. Black, all over those glass. I mean, it just broke my heart. It's like, what are you doing? Why are these glass? But also, like with the architecture drawings, you have the architectural drawings, you have the electrical drawings, you have the heating and air conditioning, you got the plumbing. Like I've never seen so many drawings in my life. And I took the HVAC ones and went, well, I don't need that. And I moved it off to the side. It's like electrical, I need to know. Plumbing, you know, whatever. I don't really need to know that as long as I know that there's sinks and showers. And I used to, and this is before 3D modeling and everything, I would sit for hours and just like 3D, like spatial understanding is something I have, you know, innately. So like I would just do walkthroughs of the building in my mind. And like I'm coming in the front door and I want to get up to that office. How am I going to get there? Now, how am I going to get there now? It's like, oh shit, that's a dead end. So we got to change this. And I'm really good at that sort of thing. But when we got into the space when Tallulah's when they went to put the grid into Tallulah's, there was this gigantic steel box over the stage. And I was like, what the hell is that? I said, well, that's the plenum. What's a plenum? And this is why you don't put away the HVAC drawings, It's the size of a VW bug. And that's why to this date, the grid goes around that, because what else are we going to do? It's like, okay, we're going to need more elbows. We're going to need to cut all this pipe, and your cost goes up again. And it's just, yeah, I learned a lot doing that.
Yeah, indeed. Do you want to talk about, just before we leave Buddies and Bad Times Theater, let's talk about Peep Show. Only because that's the one show that we've worked on together. One of, probably the only one.
I think it's the only time.
That's bizarre.
Isn't
not too bizarre. I'm a lighting designer. You're a lighting designer. That's what happens.
Yeah, we don't play well together.
First of all, Peep Show was in the main space at
12 Alexander.
At 12 Alexander.
Buddies, yep.
And Sherry Hay was your co-designer. Directed by
Kelly.
Kelly.
It's right here. Kelly Thornton. There it
Kelly
is.
Thornton. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
She's got a quote right on the wall, right there.
She's right beside you.
Her name came to me immediately. I was only pretending. Hi, Kelly. Love you, Kelly.
She's awesome.
She is awesome.
Tell me, first of all, talk to us about the show. It was the concept. And
the concept came from all three of us. It was such a wonderful process to do, is we were given what was it that, well, still to this day is an outrageous budget. I remember they were going to give us like $5,000 to do that show, as a budget. I'm like, no, but we're looking at $25,000. Like, it was huge. And we got it. I think we got almost all of that to build that colossal set. But the three of us would get together once a week or every couple of weeks for a full year and just scheme out this thing. And I'm Mr. Practical, I'm a Virgo, and like I'm always like, yes, it would be great if we had a second floor. No, that's not going to happen. Yeah, we could do it. The whole second floor could be a park up there. Wouldn't that be cool? It's like, yes, that would be awesome. It's not going to happen. So like, let's focus on this. So, and Sherry and I had very different roles in that I did the structure. I did the mapping out of where everyone goes and how it's going to revolve, and like how the crowd moves. What it was, just to describe it quickly, was if you imagine a circle in the middle of a giant rectangle, which is Buddies, as a circle space, and then out from that were like spokes on a wheel going out to the edges of the rectangle, and that was all walled in. So it was all hallways and these little chambers. There must have been, a dozen of them going around? I'm trying to remember. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
there were at least
6, 8, 9.
10.
Maybe 10.
I think 10 was right. Yeah.
I think 10.
4 in each corner and then 2 on the each. Yeah, because you had a central alley that you would walk through.
Yeah.
And then the middle was 2 other pieces, right? With the trailer and the strip tease or whatever it was.
Yeah. And they were like radical. Like, one was an art gallery filled with vaginas. One was literally a trailer that we had to cut in half to get in the building.
Did you see that recent project where the artist cast a bunch of his female friends' vaginas and had an installation? I thought the exact same thing. We did that in Peep Show.
Yeah.
I was 15 years ago.
We did that 15 years ago.
That's right. But go on, could describe this.
So, and they were just very different interiors, and that was Sherry's job. Sherry's job was filling those. So I was in charge of the structure of it, all the walls, all the doors, all the finishes of the walls, all the stuff on the inside was Sherry. And I knew right away she was going to get buried in that, just because of the sheer volume, and also because she's so detail oriented. She's phenomenal. Like, we worked together quite a bit on things like on the shadow balls of the AGO and stuff, and had a great time working together. I think this just about killed her. I remember her being in tears at the end of it because she wasn't quite bringing it all together, but we pulled that off. And the original plan was for me to do the lighting design. And I realized, again, Mr. Practical, that was stupid because it was so huge that we really needed to bring in another person. And that was you. We talked about a couple of people, and you were our first choice. It's like,
That's
great.
nice to know.
Yeah.
It was really it was like designing 10 different little mini plays within, and then I remember we had a larger sort of carnival
In the middle, yeah.
thing in the middle, and then with all these sort of Chinese lanterns lighting all the way, and that had its own kind of cycle. But then each of the little vignettes that were done, and what were they? There was a woman who had just killed her husband.
Yep.
That was who was the actress? Oh, I forgot.
Was that
her name.
Aviva?
It was Aviva. She was just sort of staring off into space, and there was blood. She was in half a trailer. You guys had cut a trailer apart,
Yeah.
and then sort of did like a cross section, and she was sort of sitting in this trailer amidst all this blood.
Yeah, it was all about seeing private things that you shouldn't be seeing.
Yeah,
it was like
exactly.
these little windows into these different people's lives. Remember Clinton Clinton Walker with this family made out of cereal boxes.
Oh yeah, that little fantasy where he did puppets. He did little puppet cereal
He was
boxes.
like the dad of the perfect family, and they were all like, one was corn pops, one was like frosted flakes.
It was pretty incredible.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah, and the guy who collected every part of he was an obsessive compulsive.
Yeah.
Collected all his fingernails. We had little
Yeah.
jars of urine
Yeah.
or faux urine.
Yeah.
And it was an incredible
Yeah.
installation. I remember following the Ooze, Richard Azunian, around, and he was being very pretentious about it because, of course, you could chat about it. I mean, the idea was you went between these little exhibits and with your friends and experienced it as a community rather than just sort of being passive observers.
Yeah.
And so he was discussing his whole review as he was walking through the thing, which of course was very disdainful because this was a different experience for people, right? That kind of not necessarily site specific, but certainly interactive and not. You had to be
Not linear.
not linear. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You had to piece together all the pieces.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. And I think that's sort of endemic of the kind of work that maybe has been done there in the past. People have been willing to take chances at Buddies.
Not at that scale, though. Not that I'm
No,
aware of.
that's true.
You know, and the fact that wasn't even nominated for a Dora, that doesn't make any sense to me at all, like at all. And it's not that I need another, Dora. It's not about me. It's about like, how does that not get recognized? How do you do a show on that scale with that level of detail in that space, and it goes completely unrecognized? Like, and even the reviews that didn't much care for it or didn't see the story within it, even in them, they said, but you should go see this anyway because it's just bananas. Like, anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. We'll get to that in a second. Now, tell me about. So we talked about Danny McIver. Anything else that you did with him that you felt was really important for you to mention?
No, I don't think so. Never Swim Alone was a big one. And See Bob Run started my career, so that's the Danny years.
Mm-hmm. Now, how the heck did you end up touring with Robert Lepage as an assistant director? Tell me that story.
I'd been working a lot at the time. I'd been working with Ken a lot, with Sky a lot, with Hillary Latoya a lot, and I decided that I was, it was time. You know what? I applied for National Theatre School for their directing program, which involved doing 2 acting auditions, which I am woefully terrible at. So I didn't get in. So I came up with another plan. Like, how am I going to learn to be a director? And I decided that I was going to mentor with somebody.
Right. Let me just stop you there for a second.
Sure.
That seems to be a quintessential problem in director training, doesn't it? How many people come out of the design discipline and become directors? Not many.
Not
and
many
yet,
at all.
It seems like an obvious move.
Yeah, it does happen. I mean, it does happen from time to time, but not often.
Right.
Yeah.
And the fact that the assumption is that you're an actor and understand acting.
Which is not a bad assumption at all. I mean, you asked me why I stopped wanting to be a director. It's because I directed a rhubarb show. At the end of the day, it comes down to that. And I realized when I got into a room of actors, all of whom were way more experienced than me, some of whom were friends, I realized I had no idea how to talk to these people. And that was sort of it. And also I realized that I was spending all my time. I designed these chairs for it that had like edges that fit together on one side and were smooth on the other. So, like with different characters had different chairs, and like some chairs wouldn't fit into the other chairs, but some chairs fit really well. And I realized that all I was doing was designing the show, and like what it looked like was more important to me than anything else. And I realized that I maybe was maybe just making pretty pictures was good enough for me, you know.
Okay, so back on to Robert Lepage. How did you?
I decided I was going to mentor with somebody that would be the next best way to learn how to direct, and so I made a list of like 5 directors I'd like to work with, and it's just ridiculous. It was like Robert Wilson and Ingmar Bergman, and like, and Robert was, I can't remember who the other 2 were, but like what are the odds? But I'd actually met Robert once, and we had a mutual friend who's a guy named Paul Lefebvre. And Paul Lefebvre is a guy from Montreal, elegant guy, bow ties all the time. Just he's an academic. He worked at the National Art Center for a while as like the assistant on the French side. Anyway, he's just this wonderful, wonderful man who knows everybody and is very well educated. Anyway, and he was a friend of Hiller's and was sort of on the periphery of DNA, and helped get DNA into Quebec when we were touring with This Is What Happens in Orangeville, and later with The Last Supper. And he was at Hiller's old apartment, and we had all this paper that Hiller got donated from somewhere, and we were at a party and everybody was drinking and smoking, and he didn't do either. He was like a straight edge guy. But he had this habit, instead of doodling, what he would do is he would write the first sentences of imaginary novels. And it was all this paper. So he started writing all these things down. There'd been this big paper fight where people were throwing paper in the air like confetti. And it was just this magical, wonderful night at this party. Then I realized there's this quiet guy sitting on the floor, cross-legged with a bow tie, writing on this piece of paper. And I was like, what are you doing? And he was writing on one, and he'd make a little pile. He said, it's this thing I do. I won't try and do the French accent. I write first sentences for, this is chapter 1. And then he'd write, it was a dark and stormy night. In chapter 1, tonight I feel somewhere west of myself. That was my favorite. So there's a lot of broken English, but they were just sentences. And I said, can I have these? I'm going to make a show out of this. And he said, sure, go ahead. So when he was done, I took them and I made a show out of them. Kirsten Johnson and I co-created. And this is one of my geniuses, is knowing my limits. So she dealt with the actors and I dealt with, staging and with the set and the lights. And we did it at the Lippincott version of the theater center. So not the old theater center, but the old theater center. You can tell how old somebody is by what they call the old theater center.
That's the one that was beside Buddy's, right? In the East End, or is this the one that was in the Legion?
No, neither. This was just south of Harvard, off of Bathurst.
Oh God,
it's condos now.
Okay,
it's before your time, honey. Yeah, it's where they moved after Poor Alex. So the theater center, when I first got to Toronto, was at the Poor Alex, and then it moved to this space, and it was a great space. There's a movie that was shot in that building. About a hockey player, and there's a wedding in it. I can't remember the name of the movie now. It's a good movie. Anyway, so you can actually see that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So I took all these and I made a show. And because Paul was good friends with Robert happened to be in town doing tectonic plates. And Robert came and saw the show and loved it. And then this weird series of coincidences happened where I kept bumping into him at different places. Like I was going to see a movie, and he happened to be there. So we saw the movie together. We went and had a drink at a patio in Yorkville afterwards. And like bit by bit, I just kept seeing him. When I went saw Dragon's Trilogy at the Factory, if you can imagine that. He was right beside me, for the whole show. I was like, oh, hi, I remember you. And we had a little chat there. And I finally got up the nerve. There was a grant through Theatre Ontario that, well, it still is, I think, the professional training, theater artist training grant, whatever it is, for people who want to change disciplines. I've had a lot of people that I've mentored on that grant over the years. And I applied for that to go and work for him. And I finally got up the nerve to ask him, there's this grant, I'd like to come and work with you on something. He said, sure. What do you want to work on? I went, I don't know. What do you got? He said, well, I'm doing this new show called Polygraph. We've done a workshop, but we're going to do a full production. You want to come to Montreal? It's in 3 months. You can come and work on that. Great. So I applied for the grant and didn't get it. And I called him and I said, listen, I'm sorry, I didn't get the grant. He said, so? I said, so I'm not coming. And he said, why? I said, because I didn't get the grant. He said, so come anyway. I've got a spare room. You can stay here. So I moved in with him and I lived with him and rehearsed for like 6 weeks as an assistant director.
How is it possible that someone applies for a grant from Theatre Ontario for a job with the Robert Lepage that already exists and doesn't get it?
I have no
That's
idea.
bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's weird.
Yeah.
Okay, so you moved to Montreal in Lepage's guest bedroom.
Yeah.
And how was the show? How was that?
It was
experience?
phenomenal. It was great. It was so much fun. And it was just him and 2 other actors and me in a rehearsal hall. And then we'd go out for dinner after rehearsal, and he kept buying me dinner because I wasn't making any money. So I had a little bit of money, but not much, and so he just sort of took care of me, and we had a great time, and we laughed, and we'd made this show. But it was interesting, like the language barrier actually helped, I think, in the process of it, because they would just improv a scene, and then they would talk about it, and then they'd have to explain it to me in English, and through explaining it to me, that really helped. But also, they were also grooming it as a bilingual show. They were going to be doing it in English and French. And there were subtitles that were projections, like the old slide projectors, that I worked on with quite a bit, on the English ones I worked on, because I was the only native English speaker. So I helped him learn how to speak English. Now I think he speaks English better than I do. But I mean, he also had a brother and sister who spoke English, so whatever. So I can't take full credit for that, but I sure helped. But it was an amazing process. And in the end, when just like the week before we moved into the Cat Sou, into the theater in Montreal, they realized that they were going to need somebody backstage. And they didn't have an ASM planned at all. And the show was, the set was just a 7-foot tall, 30-foot wide brick wall. But there were all these props and all these effects and all this stuff. And they were going to do it all themselves. And in the rehearsal hall, it was me. I would help them out with all this different stuff. And we'd just try things. And here, Steve, can you hold this? Can you do this? Can you catch me when I fall backwards off the wall? And blah, blah, blah. And so like they needed somebody to be backstage and learn the show like that. And I was this person who was trying to stop being a stage manager. And they said, why don't you do it? And I was like, oh man, I don't want to stage manage anymore. But okay. Because it was a full run, like a 4-week run in Montreal. And hey, a paycheck. And then it was like a full run in Quebec City, a short run in Toronto as part of World Stage. And then it was going to London, England. And I'd never been overseas. I thought, okay, well, they're handing me like 3 months work and a trip to London. Okay, fine, I'll do it. 7 years later, I tried to quit that show so many times. And I trained several people to take over my job, and they couldn't do it. It was the best physical shape I've ever been in my life, was doing that show, because I never stopped running, and I'm catching him and 2 other actors as they come over this wall. I was, yeah.
I'm curious as to
It
how
was so much fun.
Lepage works, because I obviously have never worked with him. But does he have his own company that he uses all the time, or does he audition, or is it just a collaborative effort? Like, was this an unusual way of producing his shows? And it seems like
No, for that time it was what I can speak pretty clearly about how he used to work. How he works now is a whole other thing altogether. The guy's on a different planet from the rest of humankind now. And I was fortunate to be there just as that was taking off. We were the 3rd hit of his. He had toured with Vinci, and then there was the Dragons trilogy, and then there was us. That was touring a lot. Tectonic Plates had happened, but it only went to a couple of places. It was too big a cast. It was too unwieldy. It was all pianos, and so it didn't travel like we had. But most of the places we went on tour were places that he'd already toured. There was only a few places we went with that he'd never been. And it was fascinating to be a part of it. Now, of course, he's been everywhere. But the company that we created Polygraph with started out with 2 people who'd been in Dragons trilogy and had worked with him many times, Pierre Philippe and Marie Brassard. And so, yes, there was like a company of people that he drew upon. And they were a big part of the, that same company was a big part of the, what was the other show? The River Ota, Seven Streams of the River Ota. So there's a lot of repeats over the years of actors, but I mean, now he can work with anybody, of course.
All right. Do you think that Lepage's success is a result? He obviously his own individual creativity is the monumental part, but he also grew up or worked in an environment that had very heavy commitment to funding the arts, and probably a community that had. I think the communities seem to be different. They seem to be willing to sit through things that are riskier and different in Quebec than in English Canada. Do you think that it's possible to have a Lepage in English Canada? Is there an equivalent to Lepage in English Canada?
No, there's not. There's just not. No.
Yeah.
No. I think the answer to that is no. Absolutely not. And his he's an ambassador for Quebec. Yeah. I think part of the reason, I remember realizing that as a director, the thing he's better at than anybody is the transitions between scenes. You know, it's not so much about the scenes and the meat of the scenes. It's how you get from scene 1 to scene 2 is where he's like, how the hell did you come up with that? You know, it'll be like its own little, like its own little show in between the scenes. And I'll never forget that, watching that come together on Polygraph and watching that on other shows. I remember when I went to go see Bluebeard's Castle and Avartung. Avartung is a show with, I think, 3 performers set on a giant wall. And I sat there going, we tried every one of these things in Polygraph. Every single, in that rehearsal hall, I've seen that before, I've seen that before, but they were things that they weren't physically able to do. Now he had dancers who could stand on the side of a wall. It's like, he must have been like a kid in a candy store. It's like, this is so great, you know? I recognize almost all of this, you know, and 1 or 2 things. It's like, whoa, we never tried that. But he finally had dancers who could actually do it. But I think one of his biggest talents is that he is so much fun to be around that people like inviting him to these festivals. Like, he is literally the most interesting man in the world. It's not that actor from the Dos Equis commercial. It's Robert. And if you've ever sat across from him at a dinner table, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He's magnetic. You know, he's got that thing that everybody wants to, you know, invite to their festival, you know.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And let's step back. I want to talk about the DNA. We sort of glossed over your work with DNA. How did you first meet Hilaire Latoya, who was the sort of creative mind behind DNA, and get involved with them?
I was lent to him when I was on that Futures grant with Sky. Basically, Sky did, the first show I did in Toronto was called Theatre Life, and I've got photographs from that with him, with Ellie Ray Hennessy and Graham Harley and a few other people. Anyway, Alex Posh Golden, I think, was in that. And then we did a Rhubarb, and I think there was like a 4-play series. But basically, Hilaire was doing a show and needed a stage manager. And so Sky let me do DNA because, you know, the contract only went longer than he had work for me to fulfill. So I think that's how I first worked with Ken as well. I think he basically I was like a book in a library. I got lent out. And yeah, I worked with Hilaire as stage manager, you know, of a kind. Hilaire is a unique individual, to say the least. And it was actually, I asked him if I could assist and direct Hamlet when we were doing his Hamlet. And he said, no, I need you to be a stage manager. And then that's when I went off and talked to Robert. And Robert said, sure. And so I never did Hamlet. We didn't talk for almost 3 years, Hilaire and I, because he felt that I'd left him in a lurch. It was a full 6 months before, but he actually didn't manage to find a stage manager and did the show without one. Yeah, we didn't speak for years and years. And I think it was finally out of need, you know, that he came back to me. But when I went back to working with him, it was more in a design capacity than in a stage management capacity, because I wasn't going to put myself through that again. You know, he's I like him a lot, but he's unique. Yeah. He's unique.
What's his process like? Because I never had the opportunity to work with him either. But his the amount of work that you have to do on a show with him was kind of notorious.
Yeah, we developed something together actually that we called a symphony of lights, which we did a few of, which was an intense amount of fun to do, and a completely different process than anything else I've ever done. And that's where you score what the lights are doing, much like you score a piece of music. So we would have these titles for the different type of lights. So we would have fire lights and water lights or whatever, different. And so there'd be I've actually got some here I can show you. But that, so it goes down the side, and then you would basically, you do it graphically. You chart it out. So like, I want this one to be on for this long and then go out, and then it'll come on for this little, be like 4 little short things. And then there'll be a long one, and it would be completely independent of whatever the action was. It would have nothing to do with what was happening on stage. And that was so much fun, because you get this really interesting combinations where all of a sudden it would go like almost completely to black, or go completely to black. Yeah. And then like everything would come on, and then everything would go off, and then everything would come on, and then like one little light, and then like this one going do, 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 do. So, but they were a lot of fun to draw,
That reminds me, one of the, we were talking about In One, the podcast out of New York by Corey Paddock, which I'll plug again. You should go listen to that, everyone. They were talking about Tharon Musser and her work with, the ballet company, I can't remember. And they were doing very much the same work, where they would do, they would set up random, oh no, she passed it on to another designer. Oh, which I'll find out about later and mention in the show notes. Where they would do a random series of cues that were really like blackouts, the left side of the stage, right side of the stage, and all these different looks that would run over top of the ballet, which is it was I think a modern dance piece actually, and it would change every city, and so the dancers would dance their bit, and then the lighting would do something completely different, and every show was different, and it was exactly that thing where they were trying to find the synthesis, and you have these magical moments that would just appear out of nowhere that were just for that specific performance.
And that's DNA. Like that's DNA in a nutshell. Like the music could be doing one thing, the lights would be doing another thing, and each individual performer would be doing something different as well. They all have their own track, and so like sometimes people would end up. When we did the show in Estonia, there was a goose on stage as well. So the goose would do whatever a goose is going to do. But sometimes we had balloons in the show that you would fill up with helium on the first day of the load in, and then just leave them. And then bit by bit, they would start to drift down. And there was one moment in one show, I can't remember what show it was, where we had an actor crossing the stage, and a balloon came, I'm talking with my hands here, I hope everybody can appreciate that. And the balloon came right in front of the actor's face. And so he had to stop and wait. And it was like a Magritte painting for a minute. And then the balloon just sort of drifted off to the side, and he was able to continue. And that affects all the next group of interchanges, right? Because suddenly you have an actor who's going slower than he's ever gone before. So he's out of step with everybody else. And you get a brand new show every night,
And what was the philosophy behind that? Was the storytelling still linear, or was it? No. So linear,
silly rabbit.
Take your linear and go home.
I mean, there was linear shows like Ultimate Night was a linear show. Nope, that's the only one. No, I'm kidding. What was the one? The Last Supper. That was about as linear as it gets, and that might have been the one. I mean, Hiller would have been much more. He was much more appreciated in Quebec, as you pointed out earlier. I think he would have done really well in Europe. He never got there. So the shows were always so huge and unwieldy that it would have been so expensive to travel with everybody. And just the way that, we would transform spaces was huge. The Last Supper was a 3-hander, for a small audience, and it would have done really well in the festival circuit. But Ken died. And that was that. And the idea of doing it with somebody else was just never a possibility, Wow.
I think the only thing that I've ever bumped into that Hitler was responsible for were the house lights at the Passe Muraille backspace. When I did the bunch of young artists festival with Theater Direct the first time, where we kind of really like hung tons of gear in that space. I remember someone telling me, "Oh yeah," I said, "Why are we've got all this gear. Why are these house lights like this little R40 bulb and a string that's hanging?" "Oh, those are there because those Toyota hung those for something, and we don't have any other house lights, so that's kind of what we've been left for." So
that was a while ago.
I know, that was a long time ago. So I think they're. I can't imagine they're still there, but they might be.
I don't think so.
Some sort of temporary installation for the house light. All right, let's talk about a mentor that we've touched on, but we haven't really spoken a lot about, which is Stefan Droog. Mm-hmm. How did you first meet Stefan? I imagine it was with the Sky Gilbert connection, right?
It was through Ken. I believe it was through Steel Kiss. He was the designer on Steel Kiss, which I stage managed the first time, production managed the second time, and worked with him. We did several shows where I was doing the set, he was lighting, or vice versa. So we worked together a lot. But I learned, it was from him that I learned model making. And any model making skill I have is directly attributed to Stefan. And just his exacting level of detail and just, like how to hold a knife, how to measure it out, how to, never trust that the map board has a right angle, just little things like that. I learned model making from him. And he was at Pass Marais when I first got to Pass Marais, and he taught me that building, basically.
That's and full stop.
Holy segue.
That's good. Moving on. No, I was going to say that steam. I'm just going to shut down now. That seems to be because Plaxton trained Droog. Right?
That's my understanding. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's Plaxton and Droog to use so that's good. That's a pretty good company you keep, I think, as far as your pedigree. So when you show your papers, you can have, I'm Plaxton Droog. Did you ever adopt the RGB lighting thing that Plaxton taught Droog, that Droog loves to use, or did you even know about that? No, you're looking at me like it's dumbfounded face.
It's funny that you say that because I've been using that a lot, but I didn't. No, explain to me what you mean. Give me the short version.
So my understanding from Stefan was that Jim Plaxton was very fond of RGB color mixing in the backlight, and Stefan picked that up from him as a great way to color mix, and when you do it properly, in that you really have to know how colors mix. It can't be too close, obviously, because all of a sudden you get these like rainbows of light on the floor. But anyways, that was Stefan always attributed that to his training with Plaxton, so I thought that if he uses it a lot, maybe you would pick that up.
You know what?
From him.
It's funny because I do use that a lot, and that may have come from him, and I just didn't realize it. That's interesting that you say that.
Well, it's not uncommon. I mean, I used it when I was in high school. I used it because I'm, special. No, it seems like an obvious thing to do once you start learning about color mixing, but to use it really well, I think, and to make it look like it's not RGB,
I use
really
it.
Takes some skill, I think.
I use it a lot to cover my ass, basically, because it can give you virtually, in theory, mathematics says you can get any color in the world out of it. It's not actually true, but you can get a whole range. And I remember I used it as like a high front light on to kink in her hair when I took that to London, but I added in the amber as well. So I had like that 121, 122, 120, 121, 122, yeah, that's it. And discovered that I actually didn't need the amber. I'd never believed that I wouldn't need it, but in fact, the red and the green does give you the amber. It actually, I got to see that on a large scale. But I did that because I knew that, I had all these musical numbers in no time, and I was going to have to put it together really fast, and I wanted options. But I use it a lot. We do it at Theater Orangeville now, where I've been working for the last several years. We got rid of the scrollers in that little space because they're such a pain. They're so noisy, and I hate them. I just hate them. And instead, we just hung 6 park cans, and we got the 121, 122, 120, 120, 122, whatever it is. And I usually add those last when I'm doing a lighting design there. Like I'll light the whole show when you do your lighting levels, and it's not till the cue to cue that I'll start like bumping in the cools or bumping in the warms over top of it. And it's like this little, it's like putting icing on a cake. It's quiet and it's easy and yeah.
Okie dokie.
That's funny.
I know it's weird. It's a weird connection. Well, maybe it's something that once you learn how to manipulate light, it's something you find easy to use. I think it's easy to go down that road and not find the subtlety in it and go, just give me the pink. Everything's pink all of a sudden, or all the blues at full. So tell me about the connection to the Passe Muraille and Stefan Droog. Did he bring you into Passe Muraille? How did you get? Because you took on a residency there, and tell me about the residency program at Passe Muraille and what the history of that is, and then how you found yourself doing residency there.
I don't know that it's a program per se. It's just like Plaxton basically designed that building, and I liked on the podcast he told a story about how he regrets taking the floor out because I remember him saying that to me. And I've only seen him once or twice in my whole career. I've only met him once or twice, but I've heard that story, several times that he wishes he hadn't taken that floor out. Me, I'm grateful he did. I love that room. I've always loved that room. My first experience there was with DNA when we did This Is What Happens in Orangeville in the backspace. And I'd been working with Stefan, and Stefan was resident there at the time. I think somebody hired me to reglaze a floor in the main space. It was the first thing I ever did in the main space because I was going to be in the building anyway. So they gave me the keys and they gave me the glaze, and I went, at 1 a.m. and painted the floor by myself in that room. And I've always loved that room. And in the Susan Saran years, they actually asked me to come on as resident to oversee all the shows and make them all work together. And I don't think I fully appreciated what that was. And I said no to it. And in the end, I ended up doing every show anyway. But I actually turned down the residency, but did one effectively. So because I think I was touring with Polygraph at the time, and I knew I was going to be away, and those tours were often like 5-6 weeks at a time. But I think I did every show but one that year anyway. And when Lane came back, he brought Stefan back in to do all the sets. I think Stefan did a year of doing all the sets and lights. And then in the second year, he did the sets and I did the lights. And then in the third year, Stefan moved on and I took over and we put the pros in. And I took it really seriously, and I learned, this is the only way I've ever learned is from my mistakes. But the residency there was a real pleasure because you get to know the room, you get to know the gear and everything that's in the space. Remember the first show we did there, I had an assistant at the time, was Trevor Schwellness, who was on that Theatre Ontario grant. I got him to go around the whole building and find every single riser, all of them. And do a full inventory of all the risers, the 4x8s, all the weird little stock, like the weird shapes, the curves, and we measure them all and draw them all and make models of them all. So and then we sat down and we designed a show like with Lego blocks, with risers that we already had. Because there was very little money for the sets at that time, and it's probably still the case.
What year was this?
I'm bad with that part.
It's probably 93, 96, 90.
Oh, yeah, that's it, for sure. One of those. I don't know. I honestly... No, 97, 98, because it was before... I remember the first Breathe was 99, so that's a bit of a yardstick, and it was before that. It was just before that. So maybe 97, 98. The first residency there, I think, was 90 or 91, or maybe that season, 90, 91. And yeah, we built a whole set out of all these weird shaped risers, and then we threw them all out. It's like one last show for them, and then get them the hell out of the building. And that's back when we cleared out the shop, and the shop party started happening. It was all in that same era, just because we managed to find. It's like, hey, look, there's a whole room back here. Cool, we just got rid of all the crap that had been accumulating for 30 years. And and just got down to the basics, but also just learned how to, like, you know, building a house plot in a way. I did that in that second year with Stefan, where I found all these curved steel pipes, and I was like, what show are these from? You know what? It doesn't matter, but let's add one of these and hang 5 lights on it, you know? So I had all those big 20 and 30, 40 degree color trends on them, and let's leave them up for the next show. And then we added another one, and suddenly we had 10 lights that we didn't have to move, because that grid is what used to be a death trap, right? So it's like, let's try and go up there as little as possible.
Yeah, this is before they put. Now there's a catwalk that runs along and goes upstage, downstage, and right, left. But before it was just a grid.
It wasn't even a grid. It was a sort of a series of pipes that had, like the what do you call them, from catwalk from scaffolding, like the, what do you call this?
Like platform decks. Like
Yeah, like a platform
decks.
from scaffolding.
the decks.
They just had like angle iron that came down. They weren't even attached to the pipes. They just sat on it. So you could actually like hold yourself up on the guy wires that was all holding it up and shift it over with your feet. And that, like, the fact that nobody ever fell out of there is a miracle to me. A miracle. And with the old parallip spheres, I remember somebody holding, I think it was Steve Marsh, because he was like the smallest person on the crew. Holding him by his legs as he like was running the barrel on a parallel sphere, because they were like 3 feet long.
These are the zooms.
Yeah.
Yeah, the zooms are huge.
Yeah. I remember we got a call from the theater museum asking for one. It's like, no, these are our best lights. You know, you can't have them.
They certainly serviced. I mean, I got in contact at CITT about a year ago with one of the guys from Gray Interface. They're called something now different. They're a different company, but they have connections. One of the people who works in the executive there is one of the guys who used to work for EC, and has the whole history of electrical controls and how it all developed. Those lamps, they went into service in the late 70s, and they were still the best lamps to use right up until the end of the 90s, until Source Force kind of took over.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're a 1K lamp, and they're punchy, and they would just, even the zooms were great.
Nice and even.
Oh my God. Beautiful field. The field was very, very, none of this cosine. You can make it cosine, but it was very, very flat. It was awesome. And they would fuzz out. I remember when I'm just going to do a little digression here. The reason I have such a love affair with them is because at the Center in the Square, where I trained when I was a kid, they had, it was built in the late 70s and spec'd, and the entire rig was EC.
Right.
And they had a front of house with the 8-inch zooms. Have you ever seen these things? They're like the big cannons. And they had a first front of house with all those 8-inch zooms, and they had a second front. The second front of house was all 8-inch zooms. The first front of house was all fixed focus, 20 degrees or 6x20s, and you didn't have to use R19 or R14.
Yeah.
Because the edge you can make soft perfectly.
I remember I used to think that Frost was cheating.
Yes, exactly, because of those lamps. Yeah. And then you go use a strand 6x9 and go, oh,
just put some damn
just
Frost.
put some 114 in there, please.
Yeah, now I put Frost in, everything that I don't want sharp, and even some that I do. I remember when 132 came along. It was like,
that was a miracle. I remember that was in the late 90s. Oh my God, 32.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're at Pass Marai. And you're saying you're finishing up your residency there. Anything else? Did you guys? The pros was. I remember the pros being an important aspect. 'Cause that was in every show that year, right?
Yeah, for a couple of years, and we got, and that's part of what the beauty of the residency was. We had this plan. Lane had this dream of like, let's put in a pros, so because addressing that space takes up so much of your time and money and resources, because it's such a huge room.
Just to describe it for people who haven't been at Pass Marai, imagine a 2-floor building with the middle floor cut out in like a horseshoe or
in a cruciform.
In a cruciform, that's right.
There's a Stefan word for it.
There you
a
go.
Stephanism.
A cruciform. Yeah. And you've got the over the stage. You have a second level
in the back. Yeah.
In the back, and it down left. It kind of juts out, right?
That's right.
So many people are tempted to stage stuff underneath that area because it's all this room, and then you try to light it and go, oh my God, how can I light that? So masking that is always a problem because there's so much space to mask. So the pros seems like an easy.
It was a good fix, and what it did was it made all the shows smaller. Like it focused. It was all about focusing. But the cool thing is that from that first show with those risers, that was that we started building the stage, and every show we would add to the stage, and that stage is still there. That's still the stage that's still there almost 15 years later.
That's right, because it was on the floor. It was not a raised stage before, was it?
No, people would put in the first that first residency I did there. We moved where the stage was and moved the audience for every single show, because I thought it was cool, and because directors would get excited by that. And it took me a while before I realized that audiences had no idea and couldn't care what direction they were facing in. They're looking at the stage and at the show. It's one of those things that you learn the hard way, right? And people, they didn't have a clue. Like when we did Sleep Room there, do you know about Sleep Room? Sleep Room was the biggest thing I did before Peep Show, and because it was in the main space and the back space and the men's washroom. It was everywhere. And we walled in that whole cruciform on the second floor was all walled in, literally. So it created spaces going around the outside. And it wasn't until the end of the show that you actually went into the main space proper. No, that's not true. The show started you in there, but it was like this big grand entrance hall. And then you left. And while you were in the other places, we did a full set change in there and flew in all these beds like from the movie Coma, so like there were bodies floating 18, 20 feet off the ground, and then another set on the ground that actually had humans. There were dummies in the air and humans on the ground. So when you came back into that space, it was like a whole other room. And we completely confused people who'd been working there and coming there for years and years. Because we did it all with drywall too. On the main floor, it was all with drywall because it was so much cheaper than buying, and building flats. We used every flat in the building and every flat we could borrow to do the cruciform on the second floor. But the first floor was all drywall. So it was real. Like, it was very confusing for people. Like, where am I? Like they had no idea. Yeah.
That's
it was
awesome.
very cool. But it almost killed us. And, it was just, these shows where people get very ambitious in their brains. So that's going into Peep Show. I had the experience of Sleep Room, under my belt. And after Peep Show, I did a show in Montreal that I only lit. I came in doing your role called MTL 2000, which was another one that was like, you people are all insane. And, and you can tell them, but they don't find out until, the week before opening that they've bitten off way more than they can chew.
That's always the crunch time.
Yeah.
Great. So let's talk about, so coming out of the Passe Muraille residency, you did the first Breathe. But before, in that period of time at the end of the 90s, we're going to talk to about Breathe at the end because you're doing a remount of it. Let's talk about...
Not a remount. There's
That's
no
a new
such
production.
thing
I'm
as a
sorry.
remount. No, you know what? If Two Pianos has taught me everything, anything, it's that they're literally, and I think this is a Stefan quote, there's no such thing as a remount. There's not. There's no such thing. It doesn't exist. Even, yeah.
Okay.
I'm adamant about that.
That's good. No, that's good. Well, let's segue into Two Pianos, Four Hands.
Okay.
Which I think, if anything is a hit, Two Pianos, Four Hands defines what a hit is, right?
Yeah.
You first did this in what year, 96?
It's 20 years. This year is the 20th anniversary.
So 95 it was first done at Tarragon.
At Tarragon,
Yeah, I think I saw that.
It was the year before at the Spring Arts Fair, which, just as a little workshop thing that just people went bananas for. And then we did it as part of the main stage.
So tell us about the show, first of all. Starring and written by...
Richard Greenblatt and Ted Dykstra.
Two greats in Canadian theatre.
Yeah.
Even, despite that show, like if that show had never occurred,
Yeah.
these are probably two big figures, directors, actors in the Canadian
for sure.
theatre. It came out of the Spring Arts Fair. Tell us about the show then. How did that develop?
It came out of the two of them used to talk about the idea of, doing a show together. And then somebody, I think Andy McKim finally said, just, here's a couple of dollars, sit down and shut up and write the damn play. And they did. There's so many famous Two Piano stories, but like before we even opened it the first time, they wrote a fax and just faxed out going, hey, we're doing this show. We open in a few weeks. Does anybody want this for their season? And the next day they had faxes back from every major theater in Canada going, yes, we'll take it. Yes, we'll take it. Yes, we'll take it. So we had a full tour and a remount at Tarragon booked before we even opened that show. Like, so it was a hit right from day one. Yeah.
And the show consists basically of Ted and Richard with facing nested baby grand pianos? Full
Not
grand
nested.
pianos.
Yeah, full grand pianos.
But sort of turned towards each other. So
Yeah.
the keyboards are upstage, downstage.
That's right.
And Ted is on stage left and Richard's on stage right.
That's correct.
Oh, see? I haven't seen the show in 20 years. And they go through what it's like to
Learn. It's about learning to play the piano. It's about learning to play anything. There's a famous story that gets brought up at every single interview that, and it was actually Andrew Ackman who introduced me to Richard, who told him, you know what, this plays about tennis for me. And Richard mentions it in every single interview. It's like a running joke now, but it's true in that it's about getting good at anything that you have to practice and dedicate yourself to, and it's about people's relationship with the instruments, about people's relationship with their parents. And it's funny now, 20 years later, when I first did it, I always identified with the kids. Now I identify with the parents, you know. It's, yeah.
And that's part of its success, right? It's such a universal play for people.
Absolutely.
Right? And done in such an expert fashion that you really can dig into the story. You're not concerned about any kind of slip-ups or amateur. Like, they're not overstretching. These two guys fit in this play so well, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and like even to audition for that play, you have to have like grade 12 piano. Like you've got to be accomplished, you know, to even start. You know.
Exactly. Now, okay, so tell me about what it was like to have a hit, because this is something that has been redone and redone and redone and redone. And now Richard and Ted have not been in every production. Have you done every?
I've done more than anybody. Yeah. They actually, the producer, Cullen Rivers, actually keeps track of this. I actually have real stats on this. Okay. Ted and Richard performed in, I think, 24% of all productions there's ever been of it. I've done just less than 70. So I'm head and shoulders, ahead of everybody else in the percentage game in terms of that. Yeah.
And it's a pretty simple set, right?
Well, I've designed 13 sets for it. And it started off, it was just spandex and red, like faux velvet, was the first on key clamp. And we literally, David Hookster was the production manager, and we literally FedExed the set from theater to theater for that first Canadian tour. Literally. It was like, he did the math and it's like, if we make this smart, we can just FedEx this whole damn thing, except for the pianos. The pianos moved with piano movers. And we took the same pianos everywhere, right across Canada. Fred and Barney. So we got them for free from Yamaha. Yeah.
Oh, that's why. So you have to rent them. Obviously, you'd have a tuner. Did a tuner go with them, or did you have a local?
No, get a tuner. That was part of the deal. Was that Yamaha would spec the piano movers, and that they would have to approve the tuner in every city. But we got free pianos for the whole year. I think we've always had free pianos. Like, it's been very, very rare that they've spent a penny on pianos, because it's like a commercial for pianos. And the relationship with Yamaha has been so strong over the years. We broke one string when we were in Regina, and they sent out a full set. It's the only time I think we've ever broken a string. I think they broke one in California just recently, but I wasn't there at the time.
Now, it is. If you were doing the production now, like if you were
I'm doing it in a few weeks. Yeah.
Well, let's say if you're a regional theater.
Yeah.
Is it not? I guess everyone sees you playing. You could probably use the synclavia system, couldn't you?
I'm rolling my eyes.
I know you're rolling my eyes, but it's amazed me that no one's ever.
We had one of those on that. We had one of those at Tarragon,
Yeah.
And we had one. I think ATP had one. There was a couple of them, and they joked about like playing, and because you can record it, and I think they actually were gonna play stuff and play it as like pre-show in the lobby, but it would have actually been them. I don't think they ever did, but no, it's all about being good at something. It's so that would be. That wouldn't make sense in the context of the play.
An anathema to the show.
Anathema. Thank you.
I did a show Oh boy. The great duo of director and designer who play the tarragon all the time.
Morris and
Morris
Ken?
Panich. I did Morris Panich play at in Regina, where we had Alan Moon and Patrick McManus were in it, and they both had to act. And Alan Moon, it was a musical, and Alan Moon played a piano, it was a live piano on stage,
Right.
And we had a synclavier system because he had to act and do a bunch of other things while playing the piano for every song,
Right.
And so they had to record. He recorded bits on the piano that he didn't have to think about because he was
Right.
propping or something, doing some proppy business. Anyway, so that's great. So the same pianos traveled across country.
Yeah.
That seems
Well, and to this
That's a
day,
big-
when we do it, that's one of the hardest parts of the process is finding a matching pair of pianos. It takes months for them to do that because they have to match. They have to match, and they have to be the same size. They have to be the same make. In the last time we did it in Japan, we actually had two Yamahas that were the same size, but one was your standard C whatever it was. Yeah, it was one of the 12-foot ones, so
Yeah.
maybe a C9.
Yeah.
The other one was also a C9, but it was one of Yamaha's top handmade, all handmade. It's like the Rolls Royce of Yamaha pianos. It was worth like $250,000, the one piano, and the other one was only worth whatever, 250, 30, whatever. But yeah, but they had to match them. The tuners had to match them, and they were able to do that. But
that sounds incredible.
Yeah.
What was it like to have a hit? Because this it was a hit before they even went up, and it's toured everywhere.
Yeah.
Now, is it the same design that goes everywhere?
yeah. We now have a small, medium, and a large set, literally, and we match them up to the different spaces. And that's, again, producer Colin, he it's like moving pieces around on a chessboard. So the medium one is going to Neptune now. The large one is going to the Grand in London. So, yeah. So we have 3 different sizes. So
Did you have to negotiate, just to get into the business side of things, did you have to negotiate a different contract? Like you were the first designer, right? When you, are you an ADC member?
I used to be an ADC member.
Okay.
I'm no longer an ADC member.
We should talk about that in a second. But
Sure.
before we get there, did you have a standard ADC contract?
It was on 2 pianos that I got an agent. When the Mervishes were sniffing around and Latimer Follows were like taking the boys out for dinner, and New York, Ben Sprecher from New York was suddenly there. I called Christopher Banks and said, "Chris, help me." And he said, "That's so funny. I saw the show last night. I was going to call you today." And I said, "Good. Can we get together?" Because I did a show called Poor Superman, and I remember it was a co-pro between MTC and Can Stage.
And that's a Brad Fraser play. I
Yeah,
think,
yeah, and a million years ago now. And I remember negotiating the contract for that, and I had I've always hated that. Like, I hate the money side of this business. I hate it. So when all these big time producers were sniffing around, it's like, I'm out of my depth here. I have no idea what I'm doing, and I need help. So I went to Chris, who's now magically transformed like a butterfly into Ian.
Yes. I'm going to be interviewing him for the podcast.
Oh,
Chris
great.
Banks, I think, hopefully in the next
Oh,
few
Chris.
months. Yeah.
Oh, good. Not Ian?
Not. Maybe I'll have Ian and Chris on the show. No, I talked to Ian on Monday.
That would be fun, actually.
that would be interesting to do.
That would be
to have
fun.
both. Maybe do an hour with Chris and then bring Ian in for the last hour to
What,
talk
you
about.
don't have 3 mics? What's the problem? Anyway, it would be fun.
It's about focus. Because Ian's just going to sit there and, maybe you should be. Anyways, so now I sidetracked the entire conversation. And you found, and obviously Chris did you well. Like, that was something that you
Yeah.
immediately took him on board, and he
Yeah.
negotiated all your contracts.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, almost all. He doesn't handle absolutely everything, which is great. The Still Union shows don't go through my agent, for instance, because I think they're afraid of him. They were always intimidated by him. And they're also like, we're talking minuscule budget, so it's not like he's losing out on anything. But I mean, and Ian's always been great about that. Like, if you need me, I'm here. If you don't, you don't, But like 98% of everything I do goes through him. just because it's so much easier, Then at the end of the year, I get a little list of all the things I work on because I work on a lot of stuff. I mean,
Of course.
I'm a busy boy.
Did you, when you got the contract for 2 pianos, did it give you any other kind of freedom to do anything that you wanted to do? Like, was there a monetary freedom that you enjoyed? You said, I'm going to do that small show that I wouldn't have taken before, but now I would.
God, no. It's not, no, no. 2 pianos is good. I mean, does it pay well? Yes. Does it pay a lot? Absolutely not. I'm not making a cut of the box office. I'm not one of the writers. I wish I was. Believe you me, I wish I was getting a percentage of that, but I'm not, So the thing that it gives me is a show that I know how to do very, very well, that I get to do very, very often. That's all. It's another show, basically. It's a good paying show. Sure. Absolutely. And especially given the fact, but it's also funny because they like to have me there. They like me to be there. And it's not like you go in like these European tours I do. You go in, you load in on Monday, you're open on Tuesday or Wednesday. 2 pianos, it takes time, because the pianos themselves need to get used to the room, need to get, and even now, like, it still takes a day to tech that show, so it's always a full production period, so I'm often gone for like 5 to 10 days to do 2 pianos still after all this time,
Let's talk about what it's like to work outside the country, because you've done a lot of work that way. Let's talk about Japan, first of all, is what I'm really interested in. Europe seems intuitively. I had a chat with Bonnie Beecher, which will be coming out before this podcast goes out, I think. Cool. And she talks about Germany and working in that kind of field. But let's talk about Japan. When did you first go to Japan?
With Robert, with Polygraph, was the first time.
Wow. And what year was that?
Why you keep asking me what year?
It's important. This is history, my friend. Dates are important.
I don't know. I honestly don't. And the funny thing about going to Japan the first time was we weren't actually doing the show. The show had closed for at least a year, maybe 2 years at that point. But a Japanese company wanted to do a production, and they bought our set and all of the props, and brought Robert down just to do interviews and to be Robert. They brought Marie, who was the actress in it, down to direct the Japanese production. They brought the lighting designer down, and they brought me down. I don't think they brought the musician. No, they didn't bring the musician. No, Pierre didn't come. So it was Eric Folk and I and Marie and Robert. We went to teach them how to do the show. And I was replaced by 3 people. Well, I did myself. Suddenly became 3 people. And it sounds like a joke now, but it's true. There was one moment when I was answering all these questions, and they're so organized, and there's so many of them, and they're like always making little notes. We're walking around backstage, and I put my coffee cup on the props table to answer a question about the set. And when I turned around again, it had a little square of tape around it and a little label in Japanese. Like, I shit you not.
That's ridiculous.
That actually happened. It was like, you can't make this stuff up. I wish I had Instagram back in those days, because I would have taken that picture like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry for snapping.
No, you can snap. That's okay.
It was like, it's like every cliche you've ever heard come true. Like the level of professionalism, the level, and like when I made a mistake, like when we took 2 pianos there the first time, we somehow on the plot on this huge, like the theater was the biggest stage I've ever worked in. That was the first time we went there. It was just gigantic. And we somehow on the plot put the set in front of the backlights and never even noticed. We switched, it was on the wrong line set. And no one noticed. And they hung it and they put the wall up. And then they come to me so apologetic, like, we're so sorry, but we think there might be some sort of a problem. And we'd just like to apologize. I went, what are you talking about? And they took me up on stage and went, are these lights supposed to be there? And I was like, oh my God, no, they should be on that one. They show me that paperwork. It's like, how did we do that? How did we make that mistake? But we had, my assistant and I, we made this colossal mistake. They apologized so many times for hanging it in the wrong place. I went, no, this is me. This is entirely my fault. I was doing a time lapse of the setup there, and the time to rehang that entire line set of lights was maybe 2 minutes. No. Oh yeah. You'll have a hang there with 30 people. I tried to count. I couldn't do it. They're all dressed in black, right? None of them are talking. They've all got like a little mini version of the plot, and it's silent. And I'm like, how many people are on this crew? And I was like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, he moved. 1, 2, 3. And I couldn't do it. I'm like, 1, 2, 3. There must have been 25 to 30 people on the lighting hang. It's like, yeah, unbelievable. Like a colony of ants. Like that's a level of organization. Just like they both came in. It was like back out again. Wow. It's like.
And what about labor? You obviously had translators.
Yeah, we had a translator. And there was a lighting director. So, and when we were at the lighting board, and there was two lighting boards. There was one for all because we had moving lights. It was back when projections were still too expensive to use. So instead, we had all these, Mac, whatever they were, moving lights with all these custom-made gobos in it during the projections, which now is just like ridiculous to think about doing. But anyway, so we had a moving light desk and a regular desk, and all that communication went to the lighting director. He did the focus. I told him what I needed. He told the crew. So there was a lighting director, there was a translator, and there was me. And over the course of the week, it was very funny. It would happen over and over again where I'd be saying something to the translator and he'd be nodding before she even turned to him, to tell him. He'd go, yeah. I totally got that. And it would happen the other way around too. And at one point he leaned over to her and said something, and she said, "You're both speaking the same language." He said to tell you that you're both speaking the same language. You're just using different words. I thought that's so beautiful and so true. And by the end of that production, we were totally on the same page, to the point that the last time I went back to Japan to do two pianos again, I had the same translator and the same lighting director, the same guy. And we were doing notes after a dress rehearsal while she was off translating for the actors, and she would come back in and go, "I'm so sorry you had to wait." And I said, "No, we're done." She went, "How did you do that?" I said, "We got it. We totally got it." Just pointing and talking with your hands, and and I'm used to that. I've traveled enough that I can run a crew in any language. It's great as long as they're willing.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's terrific. Anything else about Japan? I mean, you the tech was any differences in tech that you noticed?
Not really, no. I mean, we did a lighting plot and paperwork and sent it off to them, the same as you would do anywhere, just on a bigger scale. We had a big a big discussion about the floor, because the floor only needs to be black for the show. But we were in a kabuki theater, like this very, very old, and it was this beautiful old wood. And I thought, oh, well, that'd be lovely. We could just use that. I don't necessarily need a black floor. But it changed as it went back. When there's a bit at the end of the show where the set flies out, we do this whole sunrise effect on the cyc, which looked better there than it's ever looked anywhere else. But the floor changed color. It's like, okay, well, we should paint. They went, well, we don't really want to paint it because it's a 600-year-old whatever kabuki floor. We're going to cover it. Is that okay? I said, absolutely, that's okay. That's great. They bought new dance floor for two pianos, four hands, and covered this whole stage. Like the stage must have been 50 feet wide. It was probably 30, 40 feet deep. I've never seen brand new dance floor. They brought it out and they nailed it down. They nailed it down. To do spikes to orient where the pianos were, he went out with nails in the middle of it. Tack, 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 and then got out string. It's like, you're joking.
That's crazy. Yeah. Where's your calf tape?
Yeah, they did tape it as well. But on the edges, like off left and right, they nailed it down.
Wow.
It's like...
That's incredible. It's crazy. Okay. Well, that's terrific. That's awesome to know. Hear about Japan. And Two Pianos still goes on. Now, I am curious. The producer's name again is Colin
Rivers. It's Marquee Entertainment.
It's Marquee. Okay.
Rob and Colin, but Colin handles it mostly. Yeah.
And they own exclusive rights to it. Mm-hmm. So whenever it's done, they do the production.
The producers are really it's Ted and Richard. It's like they're total control freaks. So it's Talking Fingers, which is Ted and Richard. Yeah, and it's fun. I mean, they're the writers, they're the directors, they're the producers. They're everything. So what they say, what they want, they get.
Yes. Well, that's great.
And they're both. I met Ted on that. I'd never met Ted before. Richard used to. I'd done 2 shows before that with Richard, and he sort of went back and forth between me and Glenn Davidson in those days. And then I got Two Pianos, and I've never worked with him on anything else ever again. Right. That ended my career, design career with Richard, but started it with Ted, who I still work to this day, with Coal Mine now.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, let's talk about Coal Mine just for a second before we get on to Breathe, because Coal Mine is one of the. It's one of the, I think, a new kind of wave in theater where you're renting out non-traditional spaces and making theaters out of them. And this storefront is one in Toronto. We talked about people who listen to the audience, the Disappearing Audiences episode from the title block will know about storefront from that. But Coal Mine is the same thing. It's in the basement of what used to be Magic Oven, but that's moved, right? So it was a restaurant above, and below was was probably a storeroom for this.
It's actually a little. It's got dance floor in it. It's like a little event space, but it's tiny, tiny, tiny. Yeah, it's this red carpet. Everything in my house comes from shows. This is from the motherfucker with the hat.
Yeah.
This is the stage.
Yeah.
So this is how big that stage was. Yeah. Exactly.
That was a great show, by the way.
Thank you.
It was incredible to watch because there was basically 2 rows of seating.
Yeah.
Along the perimeter of the thing, and in the middle is Sergio DeZio and Juan Hjorn.
Yeah, yeah.
5 feet away, right?
I always said it was like seeing the Stones at the Elmo Combo.
It's totally the same thing.
Yeah.
And it got nominated for several awards at the Doors.
Yeah, and Sergio won a Door for that. Yeah.
He was great, and he was awesome.
I so wanted a Door nomination for the lighting design for that, just because it was only 6 practicals.
Yeah, it was a bunch of lamps and a pendulum light, right?
6 practicals.
How do you feel about that? Like, I feel like I went and saw something at the storefront that wasn't a storefront production; it was a rental, and it was it was lit by whatever the storefront has, which is a bunch of clip lights. And I felt like they were trying to do theatrical lighting with non-theatrical lighting, and then they failed. I thought it was really I felt cheated as an audience member because I thought because I was expecting either don't worry about it and do in situ lighting, but you're using non-theatrical stuff to try to do a theatrical effect, and it's failing. And it was unthought of.
Right.
So they thought, well, we have to see people. Well, let's use those lights that are up there and we'll be fine. And didn't think about it as a design element.
Right.
And I felt cheated. But whereas in the Coal Mine, you guys made a specific, there were obviously choices made, right? And that I appreciated and understood and loved.
Great.
Like got over it. Like it was great.
Great.
Right? It's going to be non-traditional.
Did you find it dark?
No.
Okay, cool.
I didn't, because you're in a small space and you can light it with little bits.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
No, quite appropriate. I was totally brought into I knew where they were.
Yeah.
And because the set didn't change.
That's right.
Just the actor's configuration changed on it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and how they used it. Like sometimes they pretended that the table wasn't there. And as I said, it was only 6 lights, but it was in each location used the same combination of those 6. And originally I tried to get away with only using 2 in each of the 3 locations so that I'd never reuse them. And I quickly realized that was going to be too dark. So for the most part, there was 3, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, but never the same combination twice for each location. And yeah, I like rules. Like I like putting restrictions on a design because I find out of that will come, out of limitation. Like Greenblatt always says that a deadline is an artist's best friend, and I completely agree with that. But in the same way, I like going, okay, I'm only going to, like, I did a show with Diana LeBlanc, and the whole set and all the costumes are all in muslin. There was no color in any of it. And I said, do you want to just use white light? And she went, oh yeah, let's do that. I went, great. No gels, frost. That's it. And at low levels, it gets nice and warm. Higher levels, it's nice and white, and blah blah blah. And you can actually do some color mixing without the color, and I love that. It's like cool. That's one whole thing I don't have to worry about. In a funny way, it's less work, but in others, it's like okay, now direction matters so much.
Okay, let's touch on Stowe Union.
Yeah.
We do have to get to Breathe, and I want to talk about that for about 20 minutes. Let's just touch on Stowe Union. First of all, this is Nadia Ross's company.
Yeah.
Out of Quebec.
Out of Wakefield, Quebec.
Wakefield, Quebec. Tell me about your involvement with them and what you find useful.
It came out of Nadia she was an actor in several shows I did. She did something in the backspace. They'd invited me to do a show called Recent Experiences that I couldn't do probably because of two pianos. Two pianos has gotten in the way of lots of things, but that's okay. I'm not complaining. So I actually couldn't do it when it was in Toronto. Then she got invited to do it in Montreal at the Festival des Amériques, or now called the Festival Transamérique. Anyway, and I've sort of become, and this goes all the way back to See Bob Run in a funny way, is because I've toured so much with that show, with the Chet Baker show, with Robert. I became Mr. Touring Guy. He's toured a lot. He knows what he's doing. So when they got invited to the festival, she said, "Would you come and light it now?" Because they had, I don't even know who lit it the first time, but would you come in and do a new design for it? And I said, absolutely. And I've been working with her ever since, and that was 10 years ago now. So we did that show. We did Revolutions in Therapy and 7 Important Things, and now we're doing a show called What Happened to the Seeker. And they're very low budget. They come from the heart. They're very real. And in 7 Important Things we did, and they've been very poorly received in Toronto until 7 Important Things, which we did at SummerWorks a couple of years ago, and it did really, really well. And now we're doing Seeker. This is going to be a perfect transition into Breathe, because we're doing it. And we have a 2-week residency at the theater center, and she gave the first week to me because she didn't need to run the show all that time. No one's going to come that many times, let's be honest. And it's a great show. And we just did that in Berlin. We've been to Berlin with almost every one of her shows. We took 7 Important Things to Russia. So it's been a lot of fun.
It's incredible. In a period of time, in the conversation I had with Ronnie Burkett, he was having trouble touring internationally because the producers that book those international tours are, because of austerity and the economy in the last 3 or 4 years, have really stopped booking international tours.
Right.
And because Canada doesn't, that support for international touring has, am I right, almost evaporated?
Yes.
Yeah. So how has Nadia and Stowe Union managed to continue to tour?
By doing it on a very, very, very small scale. They literally, for Seeker, the set travels in their luggage. There's only 4 of us. Like it's all about keeping it simple. 7 Important Things is the same thing. Like very little of it needs to be shipped. Literally, the Seeker, which is like, it's a total multimedia. It takes place on the stage, in the audience, and in a different room in the theater. Act 1, you split the audience into 3 pieces, parts, 3, groups, whatever. Oh my God, I can't talk anymore. It's been too long. But one of them's a full installation, like a full gallery of all these different pieces. Some of them motorized, like all of them like handmade, and like. And they travel with all that in suitcases. Like, it's incredible. And built that. Like, that whole company is founded on the knowledge that they're going to have no money to travel with, right? So
that's incredible. I mean, I'm glad they're doing well. And they obviously represent Canada well.
Yeah.
They're getting invited back.
Yep.
In all these places. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah. But it's not the Lepage tour budget by any means.
No, of course not. All right. Well, let's talk about Breathe.
Okay.
And then I've been talking about, I want to talk about process. I did want to mention something though. It seems like Stowe Union and has benefited from this. Your commitment to making choices that are simple, that tell the story in a way that's efficient. And I think it's important for people who are going into theater, who are expecting, like we've talked a lot about the big Shaw. I did a bunch of Shaw interviews this year, and so people have heard people talking about these giant shows that are done down there, and then big designers who are doing all the regionals, which are huge. It's probably important to know that even though the show is small, having a designer on board to make those decisions and make them tell the story and focus on telling the story visually is still essential. So even if you're doing
if not more so.
Exactly. You're doing a tiny show, you have to have a designer on board to help you tell that story.
Yeah.
Even if it's just 6 practicals.
Yeah.
Choosing those practicals is even more important because people are going to look at them and understand those choices. Am I?
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember years ago, Jan Komarek did a show called Alien Creature in the backspace at Pass Marais, and I remember like cursing him because he only used 8 lights, and I finally topped him with motherfucker. He used 8 lights, and he was up for Adora against the Lion King. Right. He won. You know, like it, yeah. I mean, the stuff he does is like, it's poetry. Yeah. It's like damn poetry on stage, right? He creates, I can't do what he does. That's why I'm not Jan Komarek. But, yeah. Like if anybody ever, if anyone ever doubted what you just said about making specific choices, being important in a small space, like he proved it with that. And it was so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous how the doors get broken up and how, what theaters are competing against. Well, like it's ridiculous. But sometimes, David does topple Goliath, and it's hilarious.
And just as a matter of scale, The Lion King had 1,000 source 4s in it, on top of, besides all the moving lights.
Yeah.
So take that, Broadway.
And a gorgeous show.
Beautiful.
I remember when we did Two Pianos in New York the first time, it had just opened in New York. And I remember Andy McKim saying, I was talking to him on the phone about something to do with the show. And he was trying to explain to me a problem they were having. And I was trying to solve it over the phone. And I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm going to see Lion King tonight. And I laughed at him because I pictured like Beauty and the Beast, people in big costumes, And then like a week later, I'm in New York and I'm passing the Disney store on Fifth Avenue. And they have some of the maquettes in the window, and my jaw hit the floor. It's like some of the most beautiful work I've ever seen. I got the Lion King, Julie Taymor book right here, right? Like, it's astonishingly beautiful. It's a gorgeous show. I saw it in New York and in Toronto. I'd love to take my kids to it. So nothing against, if
Not
Julie
at all.
wants to call, I'd be happy to light her next Spider-Man show.
More than one theater artist, let alone the audience, has been brought to tears by the opening number.
Oh yeah,
with those animals in the front of the house.
Top of Act 2 with the birds on sticks going through the audience, and the woman in the baby elephant costume. It's like I totally had tears in my eyes. It's like, this is incredible.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so tell me how it's the late '90s. Theater Direct is in the Legion space.
Theater
Queen
Center.
Street. Theater Center. Theater Direct.
They're training schools.
Let me start again.
Ontario. Yeah.
It's the late '90s. I can't even say it anymore.
Paint us a picture, Michael.
1992. No, it's the late '90s.
It was 1999.
The
This
theater,
one I know.
That's the real late '90s.
Yeah.
Theater Center is
It
in the
was the
Legion
dawning of a
building.
new millennium.
We were all very hopeful. Look what happened. You bastard. No, and then you have this crazy idea to do a show without actors, which we've all dreamed about as designers. Where did you start? Where did that come from? Where did you have this idea, first of all?
I think it started in high school with a Samuel Beckett piece called Breath. And I remember reading that he may have written as a joke. I'm not sure. It was written somehow as like a curtain warmer for the play Old Calcutta. Okay. Like, and how that came to be, I have no idea, but somebody was drinking too much of something. Anyway, so he wrote this play, which if you time it out is 35 seconds long, which is an empty stage with a bit of garbage on it. I can't remember what the actual word he uses, but it's a much better word than garbage. And the lights rise with the breath, fall with the breath, curtain, the end. And I remember that just sort of blew my mind. Like the idea that Samuel freaking Beckett had written a play with no actors. Like, who else has written a play with no actors? And the answer is not very many people. Hrant Alniak, it turns out, wrote one, which I have a copy of somewhere, called Mathematics. But he was very fascinated when I was doing Breathe.
Let me just take a side step. We talk about Hrant Alniak all the time.
Oh, yeah?
On the Tunnel Block. Jim Blackston, work with Jim, like a bunch of people. And I think I need to do more, have greater discussion, because I, quite frankly, and this is my own ignorance, have dismissed, because I came into Toronto in the 90s, and a lot of the important work he did was in the 80s and 70s. Got remounted, obviously, Lucky Strike, etc. But
did you see that? Did you see the remount?
I didn't see the remount. No,
the remount was fantastic.
Apparently, it was great. I think that's
it should be a movie. I don't know why that's not an action movie. I really don't.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, it should be. It totally should be.
Totally be a film. I should make that as a film.
See? There you go. You're in the country. You got lots of time in your hand. You can sit in your tub.
I got lots of time
in the middle of the
backyard.
On the fire there.
Redneck hat.
Yeah. Sorry. Anyways, go on.
So, quick Hrant story. The first time, I've worked with him a couple of times, but the first time I worked with him, he was describing these dream scenes. I have to do the voice a little bit, and he wanted the light to be cold. It must be cold. Okay, I want cold light. And I said, sure, no problem. I can do that. So we're in the backspace of Pass Mariah, and I've got like these blues, and like the blues come up for the dream scene. He's like, why is it blue? Why is everything fucking blue? And I said, well, you asked me for cold light. So yes, cold, but she's naked. Like, it's got to be passion. It's got to be red. It must be red. I was like, okay. On the next break, I'll change it over, but let's just set a level and we'll just work through it. And then we get to the next cue, and he goes, it's blue. Why is it still blue? And it's like, fine, I'll get a fucking ladder. And I went up and I changed it all to red. And he goes, yes, now it's passion. I was like, oh, okay, fine. No, what was the line? He said, how much longer must I be tormented by these lights? It was like, give me a damn extension ladder. I'll change them right now. That's enough.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
All right. So then,
Breathe. Breathe came out of a desire to direct something, because I've been a hired gun for a long time. I mentioned to you earlier, in our little pre-interview, that I almost quit lighting design, and because I always found it so frustrating to communicate with a director what I was going to do, so that they would trust you enough to do your job. Because I used to dread doing lighting levels, because you'd bring up something and they'd go, oh, you're like, oh God, what have I misunderstood? That's why I remember the first time I ever saw an IQ, I was like, finally, something that can go, oh, she's over there. Oh yeah, we changed that yesterday. Sorry, you didn't find out about that? Yeah, no problem. And it's there, like those things changed my life. I love IQs. Just a little Band-Aid. And I often won't even put them into a design. I'll just have them there. It's like, okay, now I need this. Or, oh God, I wish I had a little bit more there. There it is. It's fantastic. Breathe. What was my point? It came out of a desire to direct. It came out of a desire to create my own work. And I originally was going to do, my first thought was to direct Jump, which was a Daniel McIver play, which we did in the backspace. And I thought, I want to direct that. And it was Hiller. I had Hiller over for dinner, and I was telling him about this. He was like, well, what is it you really want to do? I said, well, I was thinking about directing a production of Jump. And he said, no, you'll never, it's comedy. You don't know a fucking thing about it. You can't do that. Do something else. And I said, well, there's this other thing I've always thought about, was like this thing called Breathe, which is taking breath and seeing if I can extend it into a full show, or at least like a half-hour show. And he said, yeah, you should do that. And I applied for a grant and didn't get it. This is like the story of my life. Greenblatt actually wrote me a beautiful letter in support of it, basically slamming the idea. He's like, I hate everything about this. As a theater artist, as an actor, as a director, as a writer, I hate the idea of a play that has no words and has no actors. I hate everything about it. And because I feel so strongly about it, you must support this, you know? And I thought, that's great. I still have that letter somewhere. That's wonderful. Anyway, I didn't get the grant. And so Hiller said, well, fine. How much money do you need? And I said, what's the least you could do it for? So I wrote a little budget and I wrote a little grant to Hiller, and we became like a DNA seed show. Out of his funding, he gave me a little tiny bit to do this workshop. And we did a fundraiser the night before we loaded in, which was stupid because I lost a whole day of tech to doing a fundraiser that made no money whatsoever. That for years I had, oh God, what's his name? There's another lighting designer. For years bugged me about doing it again, because it came out of something that Sandra Marcroft told me about that she did in university, where they were given 6 lights and you had to pick a song and an object. So I did this exhibition of lighting design the night before we loaded into Breathe, where I brought in a bunch of designers and they picked an object and they picked a song and they had to light this object into the song. I thought this is great. That'd be a great night out. Nobody but like a handful of lighting designers showed up for it. And I think somebody else should do it, but it shouldn't be. You should do it. You should do it as a fundraiser for the title block.
As a fundraiser.
For the title block.
Yeah, we're having a hard enough time getting people to sign up for $2 an episode on Patreon. So that's a little plug for Patreon. You should really sign up for Patreon. So I think that I'm not going to stage any events. I'm going to stay away from events. I did leave theater more or less several years ago because of the events part. So
yeah,
perhaps I'll just leave that to you to organize.
No, it's never going to happen.
Come on.
It's never going to happen.
All right.
Anyway, so then I did Breathe. But the process for Breathe, like the first thing I did was hired an actress and a dramaturge. And we did a little workshop where we just talked about what the hell we were going to do. Like, can you do a story? Does there need to be a story? And we learned a lot, and we did a lot of reading, a lot of discussing, a lot of recordings, and just tried stuff. And in the end, finally hit on something that worked for Jane Miller, the actress, to breathe along with. It's basically, we did a guided meditation where she had on headphones, much like I have right now, and I talked to her. And she listened to me. And that way I could chart out what she was doing, what she was feeling, where we were in the process. And I had like this whole thing written out that we went through. And I had a timer, and she would hit a little button and a light would flash. It's like, okay, now we're moving on to the next part and the next part. So I was able to break it up into different sections. And it had like a very classic story structure, and that it had a beginning, a middle, and an end. It had like an introduction, it had like a rising action, it had, a climax, and then it had a denouement, and then the curtain came down. So in play structure, it could not have been more traditional. And that's about the only thing about it that was traditional. But I'll never forget, like the night before, after that lighting design exhibition, I was lying in bed that night. I couldn't sleep. I was so nervous, and I realized that I could be making like the biggest mistake of my life. Like, here's a lighting designer doing a show with no actors. Like, what could be more pretentious? Like, this could end my career. It's like, what the hell was I thinking? And so I spent that whole week, just like determined to pull this thing off. And like the tech end of it was so huge, there were so many cues, because as you can imagine, when you record for 30 minutes and every light has to be measured, like literally we took the sound wave and measured off, okay, if this is 100, which it never was, and this is 0, you've got to measure every single one of these, and then the duration, and then you've got to program all that in. And in the end, we had to bring in a different lighting board because the board at the theater center couldn't handle it. It couldn't handle that many cues. It's like, it was more than 300, like 350 some odd cues.
I think they had an idea or something at that point, didn't they?
It was a Strand something.
It was the MX with the golf ball?
No.
Or an LX or something?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I always hated Strand boards. I still to this day, I'm not.
So probably only had 128 cues or something.
Yeah,
or
I
something
don't.
like that.
It couldn't break 200. I remember that.
Yeah.
200.
Yeah,
I think,
yeah,
I
that's
think
right.
200 was
That was the
threshold.
Strand thing. The Mantrix was the same way, where you couldn't break if you went to 202, you had to like change the disc or something.
It's so stupid.
It was bizarre.
Anyway, so we ended up bringing in an
Not the
ETC
Mantrix.
board, and
The Lightboard M.
and we did it.
Sorry.
Yeah, you know this stuff much better than me. You're the gearhead here, and anyway, so programming all that, and it took so long. And poor Sandra Marcroft was in this booth that we built with no window. She couldn't see the stage. It's not like there's anything to see anyway, and she just had on headphones and had to listen to it. She operated it manually because we couldn't figure out the time code thing. When we did Breathe the second time, we had it all on Symphony time code, and I bought the Roscoe Horizon system, which I still use when I tour with Stowe Union. I take that with me. But now on my old ThinkPad, the screen's broke, so I asked the theater to provide me with a monitor, which of course everyone's got kicking around nowadays. So I still use the Horizon system. I love it. I think it's fantastic. And I was thinking about doing the new version of Breathe on it, but I think I'm going to run it live this time. I think we're actually going to do it live instead of recording it, just given the amount of time we have. I'm going to try it, which is maybe suicidal. But I'm going to run it all off of subs. But the first time we did Breathe, we did all this math on the curve and on the on the limits of everything. What we never did before we ran it the first time was we never set zero, the preheat, because when you have lights that are only coming up to 9% and then going back out again, they don't even come on. So when we did our first invited dress on the Sunday night, literally the first 15 minutes were in complete blackness, like complete black, as we built a theater within the theater. So like it was black. Like I've had perfect blackouts maybe 3 times in my whole career. And I mean perfect. Estonia was the best.
And that doesn't include drinking in the Passmarais shop.
No, it most certainly does not.
Of course not.
Hilarious.
But we don't do that because that'd be a liquor license violation. That's never
I
occurred.
don't even know what you're talking about.
No. I was probably on drugs or something.
I smell an edit. But in Estonia, we were in a theater the size of the Royal Alex. It was white, and we had a perfect blackout. It was crazy awesome and scary. Anyway, people still love the show. Who still love Breathe anyway, even though it was in the dark, which speaks to the power of the imagination. But in the end, it was probably the best thing I ever did for my career was doing Breathe. Because for the first time, people looked at me as an artist and took me serious on that front. And I had several people that hired me specifically because I'd done that. And it's still happening now, like whatever it is, 15 years later. I met with a writer and a director, and they actually called me because I'd done Breathe, because they're doing a show that had a very specific lighting issue that I'm doing in the spring at Cannes Stage. And they're like, you're the guy that did Breathe. You could probably do this. Like, wow. Like, there's no way you could have seen it. There's no video of it. There's a few photographs, but that's it. We tried to videotape it several times.
Yeah, that never works out, does it?
It really didn't work.
One of the things that theater just can't be put down onto any kind of medium. You kind of have to experience it, right?
Yeah.
And word of mouth is really important.
Yep.
In that case.
Yep.
To sell it.
Yeah.
So when you move to the second, so there's no such thing as a remount. What did you change in the second?
Everything.
iteration?
Like, it was a complete rebuild. It was a new recording of Jane. It was a new musical composition. It was a new set. The design was the same, but I made it bigger to accommodate a larger audience, wider, but I also made it shorter, so that it could tour, and it did, which was great. It did the run in Toronto, then it went to the ICA, the Institute of Contemporary Art in London, England, as part of the Mime Festival, which it piggybacked on The Overcoat. Literally, our production manager, Sean Baker, was also the production manager for The Overcoat, and he had about 5 feet of space at the end of one of their shipping containers that we made sure our set could fit into, literally. So a lot of design choices went into that. So, and it was a one-way trip because there was no way we were going to afford to ship it back. So I went to London and did a sold-out run there. We actually added shows before we even left Toronto, which was great. And then a couple of years later, we took it to the Traverse in Edinburgh and did it there. And then it died a quiet death a few years later on a pig farm because we couldn't get any interest in taking it anywhere else. I mean, yeah, but phenomenal. I remember telling somebody, I was explaining to somebody I was a bit disappointed in, that it didn't do more. And they said, you did a sold out run at the ICA. Like, what more did you think this show was going to do? Be grateful. But it was a nice moment when I got off the plane with that in London, where I've done so many tours. I remember so many times when we'd be walking, to where people greet you, and I'd be walking just to the left and behind Robert, and there'd be a sign up there, and I was invisible. And for the first time, I knew that sign was going to say Steve Lucas, and it was like, in that moment, I sort of achieved a dream I'd have for years of like touring with a show that I devised. And at the same time, when it was over, it was over. It was like, and that's happened several times in my life where it's like, I really want to do this. And then you do it. And then it's now what? So I went back to being a designer, but more so, like I've been very lucky in that I've worked as much as I have with the amazing people I have. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. And I needed to get that out of my system, to breathe up and do something of my own. And now I'm more than happy to just be a designer again. It's the same way like I've produced shows and I don't ever have to do that again. Like I've done costume design. I don't ever have to do that again, So I've done pretty much everything in this business that you can do, I've worn pretty much every hat at some point, which gives you an appreciation for what, for the people who are actually really good at it, But so now I stick to what I do. But
that's lovely. I think that we'll just end there. I think it's a perfect place to end.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
You're like the bookend guy. I mean, that's perfect.
Cool.
I would just fade to black. Thank you so much for being on the title block.
It's my pleasure.
That was designer Steve Lucas speaking to me from his design studio in Creemore, Ontario last September. Thank you, Steve. Next time I sit down with Beth Cates to talk about her career and philosophy. And don't forget to join us with The Bellows on February 22nd at 7:45. The music for this podcast is by Vern Good with voiceover by Gabriel Cropley. Please go to iTunes and give us a review. It'll help get the word out about this podcast and share the history of theater design in Canada. And you can follow us on Twitter at TheTitleBlockCA and on Facebook.com/TheTitleBlock Podcast. You can send comments and requests by email to TheTitleBlock@gmail.com. Now, don't forget that if you like the show, please support us on Patreon.com. Feel free to share this with your friends, colleagues, students, and teachers, or listen to it while you try to fathom why Theatre Ontario did not get Steve Lucas a grant to apprentice with Robert Lepage. I mean, come on. I'm Michael Cruz, and I'll see you next time on The Title Block.